Rules are one of the most important aspects of your game. Those rules that you're creating tells the player what they can and can't do in the world that you're creating for them. So if you see this quote in blue here, a game without clearly defined and play-tested rules will not be a good game. That comes from a YouTube video I watched of some professionals that have been game designers that have been in the industry for a long time, and they've really made the argument that if you don't have clear rules, clear, concise, well-defined rules, that your game is not going to work well. It's not going to be enjoyed by players and so on. And this is not just for video games. This is also for tabletop games, of course video games, also sports as well. So if you think about it, what we're trying to prevent with excellent rules to our games is we're trying to prevent player confusion. Think about the very, very first time you're playing a game. It's going to be very confusing, especially if you're reading rules. So we need to be very clear for our gamers. We definitely want to prevent glitches. That's something we more so see in video games. And then hacks or strategies that like break the game. We've all played a game at some point where maybe somebody's played the game a decent amount and maybe they know some strategies that just somehow gives them a huge advantage and kind of breaks the game. The game it feels like they're taking advantage of the rules. So we definitely want to avoid things like that because that just makes the games not enjoyable. So not only do we need to create excellent rules and play test them, but we also need to be able to write them well. So this lesson is more so kind of looking at how do we actually write rules well and how do we do so in a specific and detailed manner. So we're going to look at soccer and kind of think about this question here. In soccer, explain the rules for what happens when the ball goes out of bounds at the sideline. So at the sideline when the ball goes out of bounds, be specific. So who does what happens to the timer, and how are they supposed to get the ball back in play. Now I know many of you have played soccer before, so you probably know the exact rules, but what I want you to imagine is you have to teach soccer to an alien, of course from another planet. This alien comes in and they're like watching soccer or they're reading the rules of soccer, and through what you write they have to fully understand just specifically, let's say this rule, what happens when the ball goes out of bounds. So here's a student example. They say, once the ball goes out of bounds, the ref blows his whistle and points whose team ball it is, and also the timer stops, but once they throw it in and the ball hits someone, the timer starts going again. So I want you to think about, on a scale of 0 through 5, how would you rate this description of the rules for when you have to do a throw-in, when the ball goes out of bounds at the sideline? I also want you to think about, so if you've never played soccer before, what would actually be confusing to you as a player? You're reading this, what's confusing to you as a player? What don't you understand and what you can and can't do? Here's some examples of what I came up for what could potentially be not very clear to players. So how exactly are you supposed to throw it in? This example doesn't really say how you're supposed to throw it in. From where do they throw it in? This doesn't say where. How long do they have to throw it in? Can they throw it into the goal? Does the ref just decide whoever they want to get the ball? This doesn't actually say. It says the ref gets to choose whose ball it is. Like, well, how do they decide that? So then if we kind of think about, here's some things that could be confusing. Based on if this was written in the rule book, here's some examples of hacks. So I want you to think about what kind of hacks, how could you break soccer? So based on this, how could you, what hacks could you do that would or strategies that would kind of ruin the game? Here's some examples that I came up with for hacks. So it's okay, it doesn't say where I have to throw the ball in, so I could run up and down that sideline with the ball, according to the way that the rule is written, and I could throw the ball in wherever I wanted. So if it went out at the halfway point, I could run towards the goal like crazy and then throw it in. I could take a nap at the sideline with the ball. Let's say I'm on the winning team, and then I could let the timer just run out. Because based on this says that I have basically unlimited amount of time to throw the ball in. So a hack that I could do, I'll just take a nap with the ball and let that timer run out. I know that seems excessive or crazy, but because that rule is not explained very well, your players can do things like this and kind of work around the rules. So another hack, the ref could point to whoever they wanted to get the ball, because up here it doesn't say, well, which team actually gets the ball. The ref decides. So the ref could say whoever they want to get it. Another thing I could do is, if I wanted, I could like throw the ball granny style, where you kind of have it underneath you and throw it way up, whatever, and maybe you can end up throwing it further. So those are some examples of hacks on example number 1. Let's look at example number 2. Here's a second example. See what you think of this one. When the ball goes out of the sideline, the team that did not hit it out gets to perform a throw-in. They must throw it in over their head from where the ball went out. The team has 5 seconds to throw the ball in, or the other team then gets the ball for a throw-in. The game timer continues running during this. One thing I forgot to point out on this one thing that's actually incorrect is the timer is not supposed to start. So in most sports it does stop, but in soccer, from what I understand, the timer does not stop when the ball goes out of bounds. Okay, so back to this one. So what might be confusing? You're an alien being and you've never seen soccer before, so what is not quite clear about this explanation here? So here's some examples that I came up with. So how exactly are they supposed to throw the ball in? It doesn't specify. It just says it has to throw it in over their head. How many hands do they use? Or how do they throw it in over their head? What do they do with their feet? That's never specified here. And can they throw the ball into the goal, the opponent's goal, or whoever's goal? That's not specified here. So some hacks based on those rules, based on this explanation, some hacks they could do is maybe they could throw the ball in like overhand one arm. And so maybe if they do that, then that allows them to get the ball further, and maybe that negatively affects the game. So maybe they could also jump and throw the ball, because it doesn't tell them what they can do with their feet. So if it doesn't say I have to have my feet in the ground, then that means, well, maybe I can jump then. In that description, it says the team. So maybe the whole team could throw the ball in together. Because if you look here, it says the team that did not hit it out gets to perform a throw-in. They must throw it in over their head from where the ball went out. So it doesn't specify who, it's just saying the team. So you could think that through as, well, that's like I gotta have multiple people help me throw it in. I don't know why you do that, but also a hack you could do is you could throw the ball into the goal. So there's still, in example number 2, some not great things. Let's look at example number 3. Example number 3. When the ball goes out of bounds, the team whose player was not the one that last touched the ball will get a throw-in. This one player will retrieve the ball and perform a throw-in from where the ball went out. So they're saying exactly who actually will throw it in. And they're saying, hey, you got to go get the ball too. And it's where the ball went out. That's very important. So the throw-in, this will be done by grabbing the ball in both hands. Okay, so now we know we got to use 2 hands. We're going to bring the ball over the back of our head. Okay, so now we know we got to do this. And then with both feet on the ground, the moment of release, bring the ball over your head and let go. So this is a very nice specific explanation of exactly how to throw the ball in. So you got it over your head, you're throwing it, and your feet must stay planted. That means that gets rid of hacks like jumping, and it gets rid of hacks like one arm overhead throwing. Another thing here, so this gets rid of our ability to take a nap, is we only have 5 seconds to throw the ball. We can't just lay down with the ball and let the clock run out. I don't know if in real life it's 5 seconds, but I just put that in an example. The ball cannot be thrown into the goal, and nothing happens to the timer. So this would be what I would say is an excellent explanation. Now, this is level 5. I'd say in terms of 8th grade explanation, this is a level 5. Very good. This is what we're looking for from you, for your rules and explanations. Like this level of detail. Now, if you want to see, like, this is insane. This is just the rules for soccer for the throw-in. So if we want to be super detailed, this is like excessive. This is like official rules here. We don't need to have stuff this crazy. Like, this is super detailed excessive. And more does not necessarily mean better. For us, when we're creating our games, more rules does not necessarily mean better. Just keep that in mind. So let's sum this up. Clear, concise, not complicated, specific, and detailed rules are an important part of great game design. It is your job as the game designer to do this. So not only creating these specific and detailed rules that are not super long, not super complicated, but we have to actually play test those rules. You have them, you let the players play test them. It's important to try that at some point. Like, have your players do that without you actually explaining the rules. So once you actually get your rules written out, is have these players like just read what you have written, and then essentially almost try and break your game or play your game based on what you wrote out. And through that, you're going to observe issues with your game design. And this last step is super important, is that you need to keep improving your game, and you need to keep improving and adjusting your rules. For example, my buddy Dave and I, we've been adjusting our game, Cosmotrons, for like over 3 years. About 3 years we've been playing with and adjusting and modifying and tweaking. So remember, create awesome rules for your game.